Melisa Nielsen with Waldorf Essentials to you. So today it's all about math. So and math the Waldorf way. So I want to talk really quickly about a couple of resources that I think are super helpful, not just with Waldorf Math, but with Waldorf in general. So one is Rhythms of Learning. This is, and again, I don't know why my video is mirrored. I've never been able to figure out how to change it, so I'm sorry. Rhythms of Learning by Roberto Trosli is definitely, you can see mine is pretty weathered, and this is like the third copy I've had. So it's definitely a really good, quick go-to book for a lot of specifics in like pedagogy and why behind things. Now we have other books. So there's this big yellow book. The Tasks and Content is also a good book, and then the blue book, the Curriculum of the Waldorf Schools, I think is a better book. Tasks and Content is a great book, but this does not do a ton of why. And I'm a why person. I want to know why. Don't just tell me how and don't tell me what. I want to know the why. So this is a good book, but I prefer the Tasks and Content, which is also here. Sorry. Should have had it down. It doesn't look like this anymore. The new one actually looks like the yellow one, only I think it's blue. This is the old version. Same stuff in it, but new binding and stuff. So this one is the Rudolph Center's Curriculum for the Waldorf Schools by Carl Stockmeyer. This is kind of like my Waldorf Bible. I go to this a lot. You can see mine's all tabbed up. I like this because it has his words behind it, which is the same reason why I like Rhythms of Learning. But this is much, much more in depth when it comes to every subject. So with that, I'm going to actually quote a little bit from Rhythms of Learning today. You're going to have to excuse my old lady glasses because it's that time for me. Like not being able to see as well as I used to. So I'm going to start with this little bit because I think this really frames what we're going to talk about today. And he says this in page 161 of, I don't know if it's Child Changing Consciousness or... I'll have to look up the reference. I can definitely look up the full reference for you. Under Teaching Arithmetic, he says, the living thing is always a whole and must be presented as whole first of all. It is wrong for children to have to put together the whole out of its parts, when they should be taught to look first at the whole and then divide the whole down into its parts. Get them to first look at the whole and then divide it and split it up. This is the right path to a living conception. I could not agree more. So really what we're talking about is in conventional non-Waldorf settings. And this would even be other homeschoolers and probably a lot of Waldorf homeschoolers because they're just learning this. Because this is not, unless you went to a Waldorf school, this is not how you learned. Most of us learned addition and subtraction in first and second grade, and the multiplication and division in third and fourth grade. That's generally how it goes. And today, with the Common Core stuff in the United States, they may be doing more additions, like more of the four processes in the beginning. I don't think so. I don't think that there's the focus. So in a Waldorf situation, in a setting, whether it be Waldorf homeschool or Waldorf school, you learn all four processes on the same day. And it's so magical to see them all work together. And it's a matter of, it really breaks down this fear. And so if you grew up with some math poop, a lot of us did. That's why I actually wrote the math grades 1 through 5 book, was because I was afraid of math. And so I wrote it, and guess what? It really helped me not be afraid of math. So if you have if you're not familiar with that concept of all of those pieces together, that really helps illustrate the whole of parts. So for a first grader, or in those early years, you definitely do the traditional 3 times 4 is 12, but actually before you get to that place, you do what is 12. And 12 is so many things. 12 is 6 plus 6, and 12 is 14 minus 2, and 12 is 24 divided by 2, and 12 is 3 times 4, and it is 6 times 2, and it's 10 plus 2. It's so many different things. We don't just have this perception that only when it's these two things must equal this. And in math, everything is always, it's always right. And that's one lovely, from quoting from a movie. I can't remember which movie. It's totally left my head. Mean Girls. Mean Girls, when she said she loved math because it was the same in every language, and she had been like a homeschooled kid who had traveled around the world, and one thing that she loved was that it didn't matter what country she was in, math was always something that she could excel at because it was always the same in every language. So it is always the same in every language. But what I love about the way we teach it in Waldorf is that it breaks down a lot of the scary parts. So, in Waldorf, we are doing things horizontally at least the first year, and then we're moving into things going vertically in the second year, second to third year. We're still doing a lot of, it's a lot of foundation, slower foundation work. So I also want to back up and talk, before I get too deeply into this, about the way we do it. So we do it in blocks in Waldorf, which just means that we don't teach all of the topics at the same time. So we're not teaching history and reading and art and math all at the same time. We are doing mathematics for generally 4 to 6 weeks or so. Or we're doing language arts, which might be, reading. In first grade, it's reading. It's which the content for that is generally the fairy tales, generally. And so we're talking about not doing everything the same day. So people will often write me and say, whoa, back up the track. I don't understand. I'm reading your curriculum and you're not doing math every day. What's going on? So we definitely do this in blocks. And with doing it in blocks, it might seem a little scary at first if you are used to this concept of doing something every single day. But how that looks in the greater scheme of the main lesson is that you are counting, so first grader, you are counting. You are counting by, definitely you want to be able to count to 100 by the end of first grade without tripping up. You want them to count by 2s and by 5s and by 10s. So you're doing that in circle time. So you're doing your gathering. You might be tossing the beanbag back and forth, and you might say 2, and you toss it to your child who says then 4, and they toss it back to you say 6, and then 8, and you keep going. I would go to 100 once you can get that far, especially after they're counting that far. You want to do the same with 5s and 10s. You definitely want to say 12 is, or 10 is, or 6 is. But that doesn't mean you don't also do 2 times 2 is 4. But I would say 4 is 2 times 2. 6 is 2 times 3. 8 is, there you go, and go that way. That I think that fluidity of backwards and forwards is what we're looking for. We're looking for it to not be very static. Also, I think it's very interesting. A lot of parents really worry about their children being on grade level with regards to math. I don't look at math that way. In mathematics, maths, I know it's different I think America might be the only country that calls it math. I'm not quite sure why we call it math versus maths. Anyway, no idea. I didn't actually research that before we went on today. I thought about it this morning, but if anybody knows, I'd love to know. I don't think there's except for that sometimes Americans are lazy and they drop some letters off. I don't know if that's why. Anyway, I think that it might be best to just talk about what things to expect in each of the grades. But I was going to say, sorry, I got backed up there. When it comes to being on grade level, I wouldn't stress a whole lot about that. Steiner had this belief that math sort of belonged to the gods, and I agree. It's one of those same in every language. It's more of a spiritual concept, which is really funny for those who don't believe that, but it really is. I mean, there's mathematics all around us in nature, geometry in nature. So much of what we do with regards to mathematics and geometry and all of that is found in nature. And so it is a concept that is in every person. It's just as to when it's being pulled forward. And so I would not worry a whole lot if you say have a first grader that's really struggling and you're trying to get past that over that hump. Just let it go to sleep for a little bit and then come back to it. I am a huge proponent of this letting it go to sleep bit. I can remember struggling with Harry my oldest, when he was in probably fourth, fifth grade and really struggling. Like we were having this, and it was long division, and long division is a struggle for a lot of kids. And I remember just being super frustrated and asking a Waldorf teacher friend, like what her recommendation was, and she said, she's just let it rest. So I was like, all right, I'll let it rest. I was stressed about that because we were in a custody battle with my ex-husband. The last thing I wanted to do was not look like we were doing math. So we did math, but we just didn't do that math. We sort of walked away from that, and we just kept busy on some other concepts that he already knew. And I let it sleep for like 4 months, and we came back to it, and he was like that. It was easy. It was easy. So letting it sleep, I'm a huge proponent of letting it sleep. We do that all the time. Excuse me. Eleanor, my 17-year-old, she has always had a struggle with math. Not always. Okay, I will say from about, she didn't have a struggle with long division or anything like that. It was from about 6th grade, business math and up. She was really starting to get frustrated. And so I just sort of stepped back, and we did a lot of letting it go to sleep. We did a lot of reviewing so that she felt very confident before we brought in anything else. And I think what tends to happen in a mainstream school setting, not necessarily with homeschoolers because we have the opportunity to take our time, but in a mainstream school setting, you're trying to catch up sometimes, and the teacher's already on the next subject. And so, in fact, one of the things that Eric will say he hated about math in school was that the smarty pants kids were the ones raising their hands that knew the answers, and the kids in the back were like, wait a minute, I'm still in last chapter. And so we don't have anything like that here. It's definitely, as you gain mastery, then you can have the next piece. And it should not be looked at poorly if your child is slower in math. I will say there are math processing disorders, and I do think that if you are worried about your child having something like that going on, you probably need to look at it. But I'm not sure that, I think often we jump the gun and think that there's something going on with our child. And those are really rare. Really rare. So I would, but they do happen, and we have some clients that have, whose children have those struggles, but they definitely are rare. So I don't think that it's something you should jump on right away. I think that's definitely you want to have a lot of consistency in what you're doing. Often what I see, and I see this with reading struggles and with math, is parents that say, my child is struggling in this, what should I do? And the first thing I say is, how often are you actually practicing? And so when I hear twice a week, then I go, sorry, you need to practice every single day if you're having a struggle with this. Every single day until it's fluid for them. And I would say the same for math, with the exception of I wouldn't push new material, definitely working on things that they know. And that's why I think the circle time or the gathering is a great space for that. That's a great space to work on times tables. That's a great space to really, get those foundation pieces in. Now, I'm also going to say on times tables, and I have people ask me this often, gosh, shouldn't my third grader have all their times tables memorized? And I go, no, they shouldn't. In a public school setting, they are memorizing them for speed. They're not memorizing them to take them in. So you really want, yes, there are things in life that you have to memorize, and people are going to disagree with me. It's totally okay. But I'm just sharing with you what we've learned through the Waldorf curriculum and doing it as many times as we have and in working with as many people as we have. What generally tends to happen is that they learn them. And sometimes you need coercing in a positive way, positive feedback way. Sometimes often it just comes though. So every year I have them make a new times table sheet to put in the front of their math main lesson book every year. We start that in first grade. Once they start doing times tables in first grade, during that first math block, and we will make this. And that first math block, I'm filling in a lot of it. They're filling in the 2s, the 5s, the 10s, the 3s, if you can get that far for sure. And then the next year, they should be able to fill in more. 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 10s. And it grows. It grows, their mastery of it grows. So what happens, they have this sheet that's in the front of their math main lesson book, and they're going to get tired of looking at it. That's the idea. The idea is that they're get tired of looking at it, so they're just memorizing them. And the fact that they're looking at them constantly also helps them memorize them. If you have a child that's not memorizing them, and I've been there, I have paid a child $20. Listen, I know you know these. I am tired of you looking them up. You are too old to look them up. I'm going to give you a week. If you can get them done in a week and you can get them all off to me, I'll give you $20. I have been that mom. I have 5 children. I have been that mom. I have not had to be that mom for every child. Definitely not. But he really needed it. And it was Harry. And so I think that for some kids, you need a little extra incentive. And what was funny was he had 0 problems. At day 3, it was like, I know them. I said, I know you know them. Let's get on with it. So most kids will, like Samuel, he knows them. And he's never had to have any coursing. So I think that, and I probably have just turned a lot of you off by that. I don't know what to say except for I'm keeping it real, and I want you to know exactly what it is that I have done in some situations. So Serenity says, I may have to try that. Mine is so resistant to math. I think that when you're at home and you're trying to, and you, Serenity, have some sort of the same situation that I did. You have a lot of children. I had a lot of children. And you're like, come on already. We need to move on. And like I said, I wouldn't definitely not do that with every child. Harry is very phlegmatic. And so there are very few things that, it's really funny to think about him as an adult because he's a security guard, wears Kevlar every day. He likes his job. He goes to it. He doesn't seem phlegmatic in his job at all. But he definitely has, when he's not on duty, yep, for sure. And so I think that it's very interesting per temperament. Other temperaments don't need it as much. I do think that, so I will talk about the sanguine temperament. My daughter, who was very much, could memorize every Taylor Swift lyric, but she really was just not interested in the times tables. So I said, I think Taylor Swift is going to hang out in my pocket until you get those times tables memorized. She's like, all right. But then she was younger then too. So it's not a big deal. It happens. It comes. Because really and truly, the only thing that comes from that speed that we get in the public school setting is competitiveness. 9 times out of 10, you don't, there's no reward in life for knowing your times tables really fast, except for that it makes your calculation of things faster. That's it. It's not, you're not going to get have some horrible test in your future where you have to know all of the times tables as fast as possible. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in college. It doesn't usually happen in high school. It's usually just something that's like a 3rd, 4th, 5th grade thing in public school. And it's kind of crappy, I'm just going to say. It kind of goes along with the conversation I had with you guys when we talked about the path to reading or being behind a few weeks ago when I said, nobody asks you when you're an adult what your reading level is. So don't get hung up on that. You really want to support your child where they are, help them through their temperament. I think that's huge, and that it's really funny because the 4 math processes all represent a temperament, and so it's very interesting to me to watch children of that temperament really gravitate towards those math processes, and sort of how that plays out for them. But I think that you really have to meet each child where they are. And when you're at home, you have that opportunity. Even in a Waldorf school setting, they would not have the opportunities that we have at home. And so really you have to take advantage of that where you can. And I think that with regards to math, meet your child where they are. Work on progress over time. You don't want to, you don't want to really be fighting them. So definitely look at progress over time. Let things go to sleep. So Laura says, or Lara, is it Lara like Lara Croft or Laura? Sorry, I don't, anyway. Hi. She says, my 6th grader is like that. He can remember everything, including his older brother's, questions. His everything but his own math. Yeah, but I have children like that who remember everything except for what they need to remember. For sure. And at what time in our adult lives, like Lara Croft, okay, sorry, I will remember that from now on. what time in our lives, as our childhoods, have we not been that child? My mother sort of laughs. I have this report card from when I was in first grade or kindergarten or something like that, and I can see this. And Mom, if you're watching, I have to tell you, I totally listen to this or read this and laugh because it's coming back to bite me. Because Soraya is this child. On my report card it says, Melissa is an excellent student, but she talks so much she keeps the other children from doing their work. That is totally Soraya. Totally Soraya. Sam will be all engrossed in what he's doing, spending all this time writing his paragraphs on India or whatever it is. She's like, Sam. I'm like, child, you need to stop talking to him. I know, but I'm done and I want him to play. I said, but he's not done. Sam, hurry it up. Hurry. Anyway, life in my house. But there's fewer people to have that problem with now. So anyway, I thought I would go through just the basics of mathematics in the Waldorf curriculum. Now, I am going to read from and mine is really weathered and really old, the overview for American Waldorf schools. Or this is an overview for American Waldorf teachers. And actually, this is a Xerox copy of a much, much bigger, and it's old and it's been weathered and worn, but it's smaller, so I can keep it in my Rhythms of Learning book if I need it. Okay, I'm putting my glasses back on. So these are expectations for the grades. So, excuse me. So in first grade, looking at whole numbers, the 4 processes, and they've got 4 processes. This is the 4 rules, 0 to 24. So the 4 processes, like fluency from 0 to 24. Counting from 1 to 144. I said 100, 144. Rhythms in math, mental math, Roman numerals, working from whole to parts. And so that would be first grade focus. And we have our math curriculum. We have a math grades 1 through 5 curriculum. Kelly can pop that up in the comments. It's an excellent book. If I do say so myself. If you have our grades curriculum, the math is already integrated in through 1 through 5, and it's the exact same content. So you don't need both books. But one thing that's nice about the math book is that if you have a child that maybe is not on grade level, you don't then have to worry. You can just go work through the math book. It's not a big deal. Okay. So second grade, moving on, would be whole numbers, focus on times tables, number patterns. Then they move from horizontal to column adding, situation problems, so some word problems. That's when they start to work with time. And they've got working with money here. I work with money second and third grade. And their attention is based on thinking. So first grade is more willing, second grade is more thinking. And I will say that, so people ask me, why can't we bring time to a first grader? Well, you can, but they're not going to really get it. They don't get the passage of time until they're about 8 years old. And that's not something that's here. It's a feeling thing. It's something that they feel in their body. They really start to feel the passage of time. They feel that it's taking longer to do something. So you can teach it to them in first grade. It's just not going to stick. And if you want to be teaching them things that are developmentally appropriate, second grade is really about the time. I would say after second grade, and I used to sort of joke that Harry had a space-time continuum issue because he struggled with telling time, but it was more in the passage of it. So we sort of teased about that. But now I would say definitely second grade, and then you want to make sure it's one of those things you want to work on constantly. And you don't want to get them an analog watch or a digital watch. You want a nice little old analog watch. You want a watch that they have to read the hands on. Even better if it's Roman numerals. Just because then it reinforces their Roman numeral work. And it makes them think more. So definitely you want to bring you have a lot of time and revisit that one often. We have, for those of you who like Lego, we have a Lego teaching how to tell time clock, and it's a clock and you have to move the hands. It's a great little practice tool. It's definitely not what I would use to introduce it, but it's a great little practice toy that I let them bring out when they're going through those lessons. I do like stories that are situational, though, when it comes to time. So one of the stories that we have in our curriculum, it's about a farmer who needs to be at the farmer's market at a certain time. What time does he have to leave home? How long is it going to take him to get there? All of that kind of stuff. So really, it gets them to start thinking about the passage of time. But with that, they really can't govern their time until they're probably in 5th or 6th grade. Then they can look at the time, realize how much time they have, be able to govern and estimate how long it's going to take them to get someplace, or to really be able to work with those time frames. So don't expect a 2nd grader to be able to estimate how long it's going to take to get someplace or anything like that. That's definitely something that comes with experience as they get older. And also, again, don't expect a 1st grader to understand the passage of time at all. They're still thinking in 30-minute segments, like a show that like is 30 minutes, or it takes mom this long to make rice, or it takes this long to make dinner, or so they're thinking in those sorts of segments. They're not understanding the passage of time yet. Okay, moving on. So this here, grade 3, still times tables and whole numbers, number patterns. Then we start some measurement in grade 3. And this is when we also start carrying and borrowing prime numbers. And we keep that very, and it also says problems in time. So when we talk about prime numbers, we're not going like to the high school place. We're talking about them from a very, very small concept. And we might do, it seems like we did up to 50 in 3rd grade. So it's not like it's not huge. It's just giving them that piece. It's laying a foundation that you're going to come back to later. And then when you come back to it later, you go, remember when we learned, let's do a little review on that. Okay, now we're going to talk about bigger numbers. We're going to talk about, and how do we tell that, and all of those math tricks that you learn then as you get older. So that's 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. And then it starts to build. And I'm going to talk about testing and careers and all of that here in a few minutes. So then 4th grade, we're reviewing the 4 processes. You're still working with times tables, word problems, averages, long division, factoring, and proofs. And there again, it's not the scary kind. It's definitely stuff that's their age level. They're working on estimation, rounding, those sorts of things. I've got my own notes that I've written on here as well. In 5th grade, we're looking at decimals and fractions. It's like an introduction to mixed numbers, reciprocals, and the metric system. So I get that question a lot. How, when to bring in the measuring. You should do what your country does. Don't do what America does if that's not where you live. Definitely do what your country does. However, that being said, you need to make sure that so if your country is based on, that's what they do, everybody does the metric system, you definitely want to make sure that at some point you show them what we do. That way it's not confusing. I know there are places in the United States that are starting to have the street signs in kilometers instead of miles. I've noticed that a lot more here in Southern California than I did when we lived in Utah and Idaho. I'm sure a lot of it is just because we have a lot more world travelers here. But I think as America is getting up to speed on a lot of those things, you're going to see a lot more of that. I want to talk a few minutes about kids that have to have testing, and also then careers that kids are looking forward to, because this just builds. And I'm not going to sit and read you the whole list, because it builds from here. I wanted you to see those 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, which is where a lot of people are concerned about. It just builds from there, and I find it to be very competitive with regards to where they would be in public school for the most part. These kids are, a lot of parents will say to me, gosh, I'm really worried I'm going to have to send my now 1st grader maybe to public school later. And I'll say, I wouldn't stress so much about math. The only thing that you will have to worry about is terminology. I wouldn't necessarily stress so much about math, because they've already learned the 4 processes. And once they know that, that's the foundation for everything. So they're going to be able to catch up pretty quickly. But with regards to kids who need to test, one thing that I used to do, and we were in a situation for a while where we needed to do some testing The only thing that you need to watch for is you need to make sure that your kids understand the terminology. So I would go to Barnes and Noble or some other bookstore where they have testing guides, especially if you are in a place in the United States where you're going to have to do like some Common Core kind of testing, or you have to keep up with that. I would not use this instead of the Waldorf curriculum. I would use this in addition to. So I would go and buy the testing book, would bring it home, and I would spend 1 week, maybe 2 tops, before you have to take the test, going through them. And really it's about the terminology. The terminology is what ends up being different. So you want to get them from that place. If you have a first grader that needs to do some testing, you want to get them from that place of seeing them as math, gnomes, or squirrels to a more concrete process. And in second grade, it's kind of the same. So you're really just wanting to make sure they have some fluidity with understanding how to do these problems. It's generally, once you show them once or twice, all of that's going to kick in generally, and they'll be able to do those problems with no issue. But definitely practice. If you have testing ahead of you and your kids are stressed about that and you're stressed about that, definitely practice. Practice helps take the stress out of it. Make it a game. That week that you do, we're getting ready to go into planning season. If you have testing that is regular for you, when you're laying out your plans, you best make sure that you have a week dedicated just to practicing for the test, so that you're not trying to figure out where to put in all of your, your other pieces of the curriculum while you're trying to cram for this test. Let the testing week just be the testing week. That way, you have more ease to it. There's less stress about it. Your kids aren't stressed about it, and you feel okay going into it. I used to think, I don't care what they do. I don't care what they get on these tests, and I really didn't. I really didn't care. But now, in looking back, one of the things that was when I had to test and it didn't matter. Then there came a time when I had to test and it mattered. My ex-husband was looking at these test scores, and so then that's when I really started to decide, okay, we're just going to take a week. I don't want you to be stressed. I don't want to be stressed. We're going to take a week and we're going to do this. I also had the ability, and I know this isn't everybody's reality, had the ability to stagger who was taking the test. It wasn't that all 3 of them had to take the test at the same time. So I would do one child, and we'd get through their test, and then rotate into the second child, get through their test, and then rotate into the third child and get through their test. That way, I didn't feel like I was so stressed. So if you have that capability and you're able to space things out, do it. It will help you not be so stressed out with regards to your planning, with other lessons, and then also with just in regards to keeping the peace. If you have a child that wants to be, a mathematician, you're going to have different different challenges. If you have a child that wants to go in a highly academic field in college, you're going to start in about middle school, early high school, really looking at what is it that my child wants to do and preparing them bit by bit. So you really, especially high school, is where you're going to be looking at, changing things up a little bit. And I would say that this would be equivalent to being in, say, a public school and going to an advanced math class or an advanced science class or an AP class or something like that. So you may, at that point, decide you want a math tutor so that you can prepare your child for that. But I would not be considering that in 6th grade. I wouldn't even be considering it in 7th grade. I would be waiting to make sure that this is something your child really wants. And they really don't know that. They really don't know that until they're probably 9th or 10th grade. And even then, a lot of children don't know. So, I think it's great to support. I think it's great to honor what they're, hey, I want to go forward even farther. You can help them with that. But I definitely would be very careful with sort of narrowing their field when they're really young. I think a lot of us knew what we wanted to be when we were younger. But if we step back, some of us went that way and some of us didn't. And that's okay. I wanted to be a lawyer since I was a young kid, and I did pre-law and did all that. Then I became a mom. and that's okay. That is what it is. It's the path that I took. And I think that each one of us has to sort of help our child when it comes to those decisions as they get older. The things that I did in high school to prepare me for pre-law at the University of Utah were, I boned up on my history. I was like majorly into history. That was something that it really spoke to me. History and government and all of those things. So that was my AP focus. Those were my advanced class focus. So your child might be different. And so it's about really helping them to find that space, but don't push. Step aside, support, but don't push until they get, much older and they're asking for, Mom, please push me. So keep that in mind. I think that's really all I wanted to talk about today. I'm hoping I helped with some math understanding. Again, just those basics. Do math in blocks. Also do math in your gathering or your circle, so you've got some fluidity and it's continuing, and because they will forget. So that's why you're doing them in circle time. In about 4th grade, I start doing math every day. And it's not a lot, and it's only math that they know. It's not new concepts. So 4th and 5th grade, they're doing somewhere between 4 and 8 math problems a day. If you have a child that's really liking math, then you could do 10. I would not do much more than that, unless, of course, like I said, they're asking for it. But again, it's not new material. It's just material that they know, and it's just continuing. Like I would do. What I do for Sam is I do daily, like extra big multiplication problems and extra long division problems. I tend to pick areas that he's not struggling with, but that will give him pause so that he has to slow down and think about it. So that's super helpful, I think, to really help them progress. And then I know when it's time for the math block, then we'll be pushing forward again. So in 6th grade, from 6th grade on up, you're doing math for about an hour a day. And that's really scary to a lot of moms, but it's about what it is. So I really like, for the middle school up through the high school years, I really like Jamie York's Making Math Meaningful. I like the way it's laid out. And a lot of moms will say to me, holy cow, it's just these workbooks. You have to buy the big purple book if you're doing the middle school. And you have to buy, there's one for the high school years as well, that actually lay out the lessons. And then you have to read it and make sure that you know how to do those things. Let's see. Lara says, Making Math Meaningful has teachers that, yes, they do have answer keys. I love the answer key. In fact, I only purchase, this is what I purchased. I purchased the instructor book. So like in the middle school years, it would be like the big purple book. And then I purchased the teacher's editions that have the answers in the back. For the workbooks, and then each child does their own, does it on a piece of paper. They do not do it on, write it in the workbook. I have workbooks that I've had since Harry was in 6th grade that we just keep using, that because they don't write the answers right there in the book, they write the answers on a piece of paper, and that's how I keep it recycled for all the kids. Anyway, I want to talk really quick about geometry. We have a great geometry curriculum as well. In fact, I kind of am a little proud of our geometry curriculum because it's used by some teachers in schools, and our geometry curriculum it's pretty amazing. So what it is Waldorf geometry is way different than the geometry that you and I learned when we were in school. This is actually pretty and fun, and it starts with very basic concepts in 5th grade, and then it gets deeper in 6th grade, and then even deeper in 7th grade. And that's our geometry is 5th, 6th, 7th. There definitely is high school geometry, but this is like the foundations of understanding shapes and understanding the sort of the nature of shapes and where those are then in nature as well. So excuse me, that I love our geometry curriculum. If you have trepidation about Waldorf geometry, it's not so hard, and it's a lot of fun. Again, it's this definitely something I will say, do all the constructions before you do them with your child. This is part of your preparation for those lessons. And the great thing about geometry is because it is taught in a block, you can really dig deeply into it and really, really sort of get honed in on geometry. And most kids, I've not found a child yet that has not liked geometry. With regards to the way we did in Waldorf, most children really love it because it's it's fun, and those lessons, while they might be challenging to do some of those constructions, it's beautiful what ends up coming from that. So I think that's pretty much it today. I hope you guys have a wonderful week.